In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, one God. Amen. How's everybody doing? Can y'all hear me in the back? There's nobody in the back. It's cool. You know, we're going to starting closer and closer to 7 because for the service to be done properly, there's a lot of parts to the service. There's the prayer, there's the sermon, there's the discussions, right? So for all of us to get all of that spiritual nourishment, the only way to do that is to start on time. So if y'all got friends who are like, oh, text me when y'all start, text me when the preacher starts, whatever, be like, no, like be here on time because we're going to start closer and closer to 7 on the dot. Right now we started about 7:10. We started the prayer about like 7:10-ish. So that's still accommodating people not being here on time. So we're going to keep pushing it earlier and earlier. So let people know. Let people know. It also helps out, right? Because if y'all know anything about me by now, I get distracted really easily. So when people walk in and stuff, like my mind blanks out. So help me out here. Very good. So who was here last week? It's getting loud. Got a couple of people here that come lower than a little bit. It's real loud. So we have a couple of people here last week, and what is this series about? What are we talking about? What's going on? It's the life of King David. The life of King David. So here's the thing: if you have not been here last week or the first week, watch the videos. Watch the videos. That's why we made a YouTube channel for you guys. I'm not the one rewatching it. Actually, maybe sometimes I do, but it's mainly for y'all, so we can like be all on the same page. So when I pick up today, y'all are not confused, right? Also, it doesn't hurt to bring notes, right? This is when anybody finishes a sermon or does a preaching or reads the word of God, we say, or may you hear the words of life. That's a big saying, right? May you hear the words of life. The word of God is words of life. It guides you. It's like a roadmap that gets you through life. When you leave here, you may forget these things that you've heard. You may hear the things I'm saying, be like, oh, like that makes sense. Oh, I like that he said that. That makes sense to me. But the moment you leave, it starts to lose it, right? So when you write it down, you're being intentional about it. When you're being intentional about it, God peeps that. God sees that. When he sees you're being intentional, putting effort, he blesses that. It doesn't hurt to bring notes. What we're going to do is we're going to do a quick recap of the past 2 weeks, and then we're going to dive straight into today's lesson. So we'll do that and get started. So first week, we didn't really talk much about David. Although it's supposed to be the life of King David, I explained to y'all we can't really talk about David's life without Saul, because Saul impacted David's life for the good and for the bad. So we're spending a lot of time on Saul for that particular reason. When Saul, like, he's the first king of Israel. We know this, right? But the thing with Saul is, he was somebody that was anointed by God, not because God wanted to. God was like, y'all want a king? Fine, here you go. Saul, that dude, pick him, anoint him. Y'all want a king so bad? Take him. He wasn't happy with it. Why? Because up to that point, God was the leader of the Israelites. He was their king, he was their God, he was their leader, he was their father, he was their shepherd, he was everything to them. And so when they got up and looked at other nations, saw that they had kings with shining armor and looked good, and they wanted to be like them, and when they asked for a king, God was like, excuse me? Like, you want a king? Like, who do you think I am to you? Like, what do y'all think of me? You know what? Fine. Take your king. And so Saul was somebody who we call man's plan. That was not God's plan. And we talked about how sometimes God, he gives us what we ask for, not necessarily for it to be a blessing for us, but for it to be a lesson for us. Especially if we're begging God for certain things that is not really good for our salvation, he will be like, you know what, fine. I'm going to give it to you, but you're going to see it's not exactly what you thought it would be. Saul, he gave it to them. He gave Saul as a king to them. But Saul was not who they thought he would be. And because of Saul, the Israelites were struggling. They were struggling. Not necessarily losing wars to people, but they were struggling because God was no longer really working with them. Because he's like, y'all want an earthly king? Take him. And so last week we talked about kind of Saul's struggle. So initially, actually, Saul was pretty good. He started out really humble. Like, they anointed him and like they were looking for him to exalt him, be like, yo, look at your new king. But he's like hiding. He's like, no, me? Like, don't talk to me like this. Like, what tribe is he from? Trivia. What tribe is he from? Thank you, Adis. I'm sorry. He's from the tribe of Benjamin. Tribe of Benjamin. So Benjamin, just so you know about this tribe, it's the smallest tribe in like all of Israel. Israel, at this point, they're not split north and south yet, but there is some division. Saul is from the smallest tribe in that whole nation, right? And so even when he responds back to them trying to have him be the king, he's like I'm from the smallest tribe in the whole nation. Why me? Like, he's being so humble. He hid. And then immediately after he got ordained as king, what does he do? He shuts down idol worship. He goes place to place. Y'all worshiping idols? Y'all worshiping idols? Not under my reign. We worship the true God. Not only that, he starts to unite Israel. Remember, they have, even though they didn't split yet, there was still ethnic tribalism, if you will, or whatever, like you want to call it. Like, they did not like each other. Based on what tribe they were from, there was some tension there. Saul was like, no, none of that. We are descendants of Abraham, of Isaac, of Jacob. We're going to be one people. He unites everybody. It's looking great. He even wins some wars. And like, he wins some wars, and the ladies start like singing for him. They're like, Saul like killed his thousands, and I'm like singing, Mazmur, like glorifying him. Like, everything was great. Everything was looking good. And then he makes a boo-boo. 2 boo-boos. I don't know why I said boo-boo, but you know, mistake. The first mistake was what? What was the first mistake that Saul did? Anybody know? No. He offered a sacrifice before Samuel. Samuel, he's the only one who could offer sacrifice. So like I said, the Israelites, before they go to war with any nation, they got to ask God first. Like, they need, like, remember, God is their leader. Even though they want another king, God is their leader. So like, they would wait and like have the prophet Samuel, who's the leader of all the prophets, to offer a sacrifice. And you got to remember, they're going to war against the Philistines. The Philistines are closing in, and Saul, he's like, dang, my troops, like, they don't know what to do. They're waiting on me to give them the call to say, go fight. Samuel's late. I'm going to just offer the sacrifice myself. And God is like, you disobeyed me. Samuel, he pulled up immediately after he did it. He's like, how could you do this? How could you not trust in God? Why didn't you just wait? Instead of owning up to it, he made excuses. Fine. God is like, you know what? It's cool. It's cool. And about 7 years later, he makes another mistake. He's commanded to go to war to this wicked nation and destroy everything that's in there. The sheep, the cattle, the animals, the people. We talked about last week why God would allow, God is loving. Why would he allow a king to destroy a whole nation? Watch part 2 if you want the answer to that. Anyways, he asks Saul to kill them all and leave nothing. What does Saul do? The opposite. He kills some of them, leaves their leader, leaves their king, leaves some of their flock. He disobeys it again. And Samuel's like, what are you doing? Like, God is clearly giving you a second chance. You messed up the first time. He's giving you another chance. You're still not listening. What is going on with you? And then what does he do? He starts making excuses again. Well, actually, I wasn't the one fighting. It was the soldiers. And we killed most of them. 80%, that's passing, right? God is like, that's not how it works with God. If God gives a commandment, he means it. Give him the whole commandment. Saul didn't obey it. And so where do we leave off? We left off with Samuel saying, that's it. God is taking away your kingdom, and he's going to give it to your neighbor. His neighbor who is better than you. And that stung Saul. That stung Saul. He's like, no. And he starts repenting. He's like, God, please forgive me. I didn't mean to do it. Samuel, don't leave me. Come back with me so the people know I'm still good. Even though he was begging God for forgiveness, he messed up. Why? He wasn't doing it from his heart. How do we know he wasn't doing it from his heart? At the end of his prayer, his repentance, he asked Samuel to come with him to the nation. What does this indicate? He wasn't really repenting from his heart. He cared what other people thought about him more than anything. He's like, oh no, I'm going to lose my kingdom. No. Not because he cared about God, but because he cared about what the people would think about him. And so he tries to grab Samuel. Samuel turns, he rips a part of his shirt off, and Samuel's like, just like you ripped this off of me, God will rip the kingdom away from you. And then they go to anoint the new king. And Samuel, he's told to go into somebody's house named Jesse. Go into Jesse's house. God's like, go there, you'll find the king there. He goes into Jesse's house, and Jesse's freaking out. Oh my goodness, why is there a prophet in my house right now? Why is he in this land right now? Why is he in this little town, Bethlehem? What is going on? And so Samuel's giving specific instructions. And God's like, I'm listening here closely. Man's plan, Saul, done. We're beginning God's plan. I want you to ordain this person. who's not like any person you've ever seen before. Why? He's not like what you guys look for on the outside. I'm looking at his inside. He's a man after my heart. I want that person. So he goes inside the house and like he talks to Jesse. He's like, I need to ordain somebody from this house. Present to me all your children. And so Jesse, he brings all his children there. They're all like tall, big, muscular. He's like, is it this one? Is it this one? Is it this one? And then God is saying, no, no, no. And Jesse's like, well, that's all I got. Samuel's like, you sure there's no one? There's nobody else? And Jesse's like, well, actually, you know, there is. I do have another son. But he's the one with the sheep. You don't want him? Keep in mind, there's a whole prophet in the house. This is a huge deal. Like, y'all know, if y'all ever had priests come into your house, like, your parents start freaking out, like, get up, like, nah, like, whatever, like, we gotta, like, get ready. This is a big deal, a prophet. David, he's playing with the sheep. Why? Because he knows his family doesn't want him out there. He's like, I know something's going on out there, but my brothers, they don't acknowledge me. My father forgot about me. It's cool though, I have my sheep. And so he brings David in, and David's like scrawny, just like, he doesn't look anything like a king. He's short. He is not like anything like, you look at him, he's just like a random person. And then God's like, yeah, that's the one. That's the next king. And so they anoint him. And you know what David does after he's anointed? Can I go back to my sheep? Y'all done here? Like, okay, cool. Like, sheep? Yes. So he goes back to his sheep. So that's where we're going to pick up today. That's a little review of where we've been the last couple weeks. We're going to pick up today with what happened. David, he just got anointed. Remember though, he can't become king until Saul dies. Even though he's anointed, you have to wait for the person ordained to die first before you begin your reign. David, he's not really consumed by this. He's like, okay, like, I'm the next king, but it's like not really weighing heavy on his mind. He's a very simple dude. Like, he just needs his sheep. He plays harp. He's into music, like Mizmor, and he writes poetry. He writes songs. That's what gives him peace. That's what gives him happiness. He's not really into, like, you know, that rah-rah, like I've never said that before. He's not really into, like, you know, like worldly things. That's just not his thing. So there's something very interesting that happens after a verse that's like really crazy, and you'll hear it and you won't like it. You'll be like, what? Like, is that a typo? It's not though. It says this: the spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and the evil spirit from the Lord tormented him. The spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and an evil spirit from the Lord tormented him. We hear this and we don't like that. God is loving. God, that's the good shepherd. That's the protector. He neither slumbers nor sleeps. He sent an evil spirit onto Saul, and it tormented him. Now y'all are thinking, dang, is that why I'm like struggling right now? Do I have an evil spirit tormenting me? Like it's a crazy thing. It's a crazy thing. And then some people, they're like, you know what? That's not really what happened. Like God, like this is how we kind of interpret it. God didn't send an evil spirit. He allowed an evil spirit. He allowed an evil spirit. That's not true though. He literally sent an evil spirit to torment him. Why? Why would he do that? Why would he do that? Saul's his child. Why would he do that? Easy. To give him a chance to repent. Remember, from the time he offered the sacrifice that he wasn't supposed to, and now it's been 7 years. And in that 7 years, he has not called on God once with his heart. What's worse? God completely doing nothing and allowing you to self-destruct, or him sending you something to wake you up? It said it was tormenting him. What do you do when life gets hard? When life gets difficult? When you have nowhere to go? You go to God. At least now Saul, he may, like, some alarm bells may ring in his head, and he may decide, fine, I should go to God. It's been 7 years. I should go to God. So God's like, he sends it to him. You see, like I said, God, he doesn't send things for no reason. Everything he does in our life is meant for our salvation. We look at things narrow-minded, short-sighted, can't see the future. So we are so quick to say, that's a bad thing that happened to me. Or that's a good thing that happened to me. In reality, we have no clue. You have no clue. But what we know for a fact, everything that God allows is for the good. He can't do bad. He's not capable of doing bad. Remember, he created everything and everything was good. How is everything good? Because he's good. Everything that is put in our life, the things that we think is a bad thing, is actually a blessing. It's actually something either to correct us or to strengthen us. And that's what he did for Saul. James chapter 1 verse 13. God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he himself tempt anyone. No. He doesn't do that. What he did with Saul is he gave him his heart's desire. Which was to just be consumed by being a king. We'll talk about that in a second. He's trying to talk to him. Remember, Samuel, he would cry to Saul. Saul would completely ignore it. Samuel would go to Saul repeatedly. You're wilding. You're doing wrong. You're not supposed to do this. Saul's not getting it. So God's like, you know what? I'm going to give you to your heart's desires. Do your thing. And this is why St. Paul says this in Romans chapter 1. Therefore God gave them up to uncleanness. God gave them up to uncleanness and the lusts of their hearts to dishonor their bodies among themselves. For this reason God gave them up to vile passions. And even as they did not like to retain God their knowledge, God gave them over to a debased mind to do those things which are not fitting. When we persist on rejecting God, God simply, he says, fine, continue doing it. You will really see what it means for me to not be in your life. And then you'll come back to me. Saul insisted on evilness. And God, the only reason why Saul hasn't completely committed suicide or lost it is because God kept trying to work. God was that last little leak he had in his life to not be done. That's the only reason why Saul's standing right now. And so God is like, you know what? I'm going to step back and you're going to see the fruits of your labor. Because I've been shielding you from a lot of things. Remember, Israel, they're prospering right now. Don't get that twisted. They're doing well. He's shielding them from a lot. Could there not be a war and have them all be captive? Could Saul not be in prison in shackles? Could he not be a prisoner, abused by the other nations? The only thing keeping him sane, even a little bit, the last bit of sanity he has, is because God has not completely forsaken him. But when we insist on our own ways, God's like, here, take it. Do your own thing. Y'all know the stories with Moses and Pharaoh? If y'all ever read those stories, it kind of I never understood it growing up. It would be God would send Moses to talk to Pharaoh and be free the people. And then it would say in that same verse, God hardened the Pharaoh's heart. That don't make sense. God, you're telling Moses to tell them to free the people, but then the next verse is saying you're hardening Pharaoh's hearts. How is he supposed to free the people? You got to know what hardening hearts means. It means exactly what we just talked about in Romans. Allowing people to just go and do their desire. Remember, therefore God gave them up to uncleanness. Meaning, he stepped back and let their evilness just consume them. Why? Because they wouldn't turn to him. So now his hope is, when you see how your ways will ruin your life and spiral you downwards, then I can work. Hopefully. I can't force it, but then hopefully you'll turn to me after that. So the plan for Saul was to give him up to his desires. And what did it say? It was he was being tormented. Why? So he can finally go to God. This is plan Z for God. God, he does not say, oh, you're not listening, you didn't go to church today. That's it. Destruction in your home. That's not how he works. He will try to wake us up gently, lovingly, like a dad, like a father, like a mother too. But just like a loving mother or father, he cannot watch us continue to self-destruct. If there's a kid playing with fire, you can only tell them so many times to stop, and eventually they'll get burned. Sometimes you gotta get burned to let you learn your lesson, or else you're gonna insist on your own way. When man persists on rejecting God and delivering himself to evil, God forsakes him, and he gives him up to the lust of his will, and God will allow to chastise him. For example, murder. Unless you're kind of crazy, usually nobody gets up and says, I'm going to murder somebody today. They don't wake up first day in the morning, it's a beautiful day to murder somebody. Nobody does that. Usually it's because something within your heart has built up. Anger, resentment. How many, like, there's been a lot of stories actually recently that I've seen of like guys like killing like their girlfriends. Especially, I was reading articles like an athlete, an NBA, not a college basketball athlete, I think at the University of Alabama or something. He killed his girlfriend. Have y'all heard of that? Some of y'all may have heard of that. I don't know. Why? Because like he caught her like cheating on him. That anger built up, and rather than like tending to that anger, he killed her. Same thing with like pornography, for example. You start out innocently, you watch it. It's not really innocent, but you watch it like by yourself, and then eventually, when you don't stop that, when you don't go to God, you spiral downwards. And you guys know how like we hear stories about like, you know, what people do like that's like completely inappropriate or whatever. It starts out with that. You just spiral downwards. So Saul, he's being tormented, and like his troops, they know it. Not only is he being tormented by his evil spirit, you gotta keep in mind what happened last time too. What did his son do? What's his son's name? Anybody remember? Jonathan. His son's name is Jonathan. Jonathan, he went to war without his dad's permission. Big deal. You can't do stuff without the king knowing. But Jonathan, he's a godly man. He knows that his dad is acting selfishly right now. So he goes to war, and they win. And then Saul, his dad, he hears about this. He's like, he doesn't know it's Jonathan yet. He's like, who did it? Who did it? Who went to war? And then nobody would say anything. So he's like, that's it. Nobody will eat or drink until I get revenge on my enemies. What happened to his humility? Remember, this is the same dude who hid. Until I get revenge. He's insecure. He's worried. People are disobeying me. Oh no. Like, it's happening. Like, I could feel it like slipping away my kingdom. I gotta be harsh. And so he says, nobody can eat or drink. And Jonathan, he's with his troops, and they're starving. They're like falling down. They can't, like, they can barely stand. Remember, they're going to war. And Jonathan's like, you know what, this is nuts. He finds honey. He's like, look. And he eats it. And immediately he's like filled with energy. And he tells everybody, eat. He's like, my dad, he's crazy. Literally, he's crazy. Eat. And they all ate. And Saul, he finds out about this. He asks everybody, who did it? Who did it? Whose order was it? And they're like, it's Jonathan. He brings Jonathan in, and he's about to kill him. But then the people of the nation, they're like, no, you won't. He saved our life. Now Saul, he's freaking out now. Like, the troops don't respect him. His son don't respect him. He's being tormented by an evil spirit. In the midst of this, like, the few people that are still loyal to me, still has a good amount of people loyal to him. They're like, hey, Saul, you need somebody, like, you need some professional help. Have you heard of therapy? Like, you need something. And so he's like talking, he's like, who should I go to? Who should I go to? And one of the troops, they bring up an idea. They're like, there's this one boy, like, he's like the son of Jesse, and he plays the harp. Why don't you just invite him over to play the harp? Like, maybe that'll calm you down. So he's like, yeah, go bring him. Go bring him. What's his name? Is he the one that hangs out with the sheep? Is it the sheep boy? What was that dude's name? David is his name. So yeah, go get him. So they bring David in, and David, he comes to play instruments for him. Is that not crazy? David is what? He got ordained what? A king. But it says he was with the sheep. And they're saying, hey, sheep boy, come here and play your instrument for me. This is the next king of Israel. Not only that, it's chosen by God. And he's like, okay. Like, I get to play the instruments for, like, in the king's house? Are you sure? Like, me? Like, y'all want me to be there? Like, I mean, I'm not even allowed out of my room, like, let alone, like, the king's house. I can come? Let's do it. I can bring my harp too? He's excited. Not once did it cross his mind, I'm the king of Israel. No, he was so excited, so honored, because he saw Saul as being anointed by God. He had so much respect for that. I get to be in God's anointed house? Let's do it. So he brings the instrument, he goes out, and it says this, David came to Saul and stood before him, and he loved him greatly. David's just like, wow, this is the king of Israel. Like, what an honor. Like, he bows down to him. And don't think this is false humility. Not once in his mind was he thinking, if only he knew I was the next king. What do people usually do actually? Y'all know, y'all taking enough history classes. When like there's a new king or a prospective king, what do they do to the current king? They get him out of there. They kill him. Correct? Usually, if you look at anything about history, that's like what happens. When like people are done with the king, the next king to be kills him. David's reaction is, wow, Saul. Isn't that not crazy? That's the kind of person David was. So he comes and plays a harp for him. Mazmur. And as he's playing this, it says the evil spirits, the distressing spirits, left Saul. This is the thing. Don't read this and just gloss over it. When we say, like, what do we say, like, in church after Mazmur is sang? Like, Zammari Malakya Sammalan. Or may you hear the hymns of the angels. What does that mean? It means to, like, receive what Saul received. That peace. That calmness. Mazmur is a very big thing. For some people, like, it's like more than a preaching. Because a Mazmur itself is a preaching. If you listen to the words. You know I have to go on a tangent. English Mazmur. How y'all feel about that? Thumbs up? If you don't put your thumbs up, that means you don't like it. Everyone's like... Here's the thing. It's not about preference. It's not about preference. You can prefer whatever you want. Hard because to bring out English, it don't matter. But what you cannot deny is these are the hymns of the angels. It's very, very bold of us to be like, this is corny. Turn this off. It's very, very bold of us to be like, this don't hit. Mazmur, it don't hit? Like, that's a crazy thing to say. It's the hymns of the angels. We become like Saul. Eventually Saul, like the Mazmur don't hit for him anymore. And he's like, get out of here. He actually tries to kill David a couple of times when he tries to play music for him. We'll see that. We become like that. When we be like, this much, turn this off. Next. That's like what Saul had. That kind of heart. It's like, this is what's crazy though. David, a king going back to play Mazmur for Saul is like Beyonce being told to go back to singing classes. Like, what kind of humility does that take to do that, to go to that next step? Like, nobody would do that. Nobody would do that. It's like a teacher, like a preacher, a well-seasoned preacher being told, hey, you know what? I think you need to go back to preaching class. And him saying, okay. Who would do that in our days? Nobody. True story. There's a story of a monk, and he's in a monastery, and he's like looking for like people to interpret this Bible verse for him. And he's going from place to place. He's like, can you interpret this verse for me? Can you interpret this verse for me? Can you interpret this verse for me? And he's going to different monks. And one monk's like, oh, bro, easy. It means this. And he's like, no, it doesn't. And he goes to the next person. He's like, interpret this verse for me. And he's like, it's this, easy verse. He's like, no, that's not what it means. And then he goes to everybody, can't find anybody to interpret it for him. And he goes to one last person. He asks him, what does this verse mean? And that monk says, I don't know. And the monk was like, one person finally answered correctly. He was trying to gauge their humility. That's what David embodied. So here's the thing. The Spirit of God has left him, Saul. It literally said that, right? That's the verse we started out with. The Spirit of God left him, and what? What was sent to him? Say it. What was sent to him? An evil spirit, a troubling spirit. The Spirit of God has left him, and he thinks his solution is some dude coming in to play a harp for him. That'll make him feel good, but he got deeper issues. This man is insecure. You know he becomes schizophrenic? That's how crazy it gets. He has issues. Why couldn't Saul see the problem? What we need to know about Saul is, don't get it twisted. He's not an adulterer like David. He's not a thief like what David was doing when he was we'll talk about that. And he's not even a murderer to the same capacity what David was. But for whatever reason, one person was rejected by God, and then the adulterer, the murderer, and the thief was accepted by God. And Saul did none of this. That makes no sense by our logic. Like if we brought like Saul and David home to our parents, and we're like, hey, like this is Saul, like, you know, he's the king of Israel, you know, he hasn't really committed adultery, he's not a thief, he's a little crazy. But then here's my friend David. He raped somebody and murdered somebody. What's our parents gonna say? Like, what you doing with this dude? Like, I don't have a mom. Like, this is not gonna work. Like, kick it with Saul with anything, not David. But God, for whatever reason, is like, no. I like David. I like David. Do you know what Saul's issue was? If he wasn't an adulterer, if he wasn't a thief, what was it that made him clash with God so much? We talked about this. I've said it a couple times. What is it? What was his issue? His issue was, quite simply, he wanted to be the best king ever. That was his issue. Not his adultery, he didn't do that. Not him stealing, he didn't do that. His biggest issue was he wanted to be the best king ever. Not to please God though, but to please other people, for other people to praise him. God resists the proud but gives grace to the humble. That's his issue with him. God, he doesn't care about outside. He doesn't care about what you're doing. He cares about your inside. What does your inside look like? Saul, on the outside, look at the nation was at peace, by the way. Like I said earlier, it was at peace. There was no wars. Everything looked good. But for whatever reason, Saul was going nuts. He was going crazy. The nation is fine, but Saul was going crazy and he couldn't realize why. We're so consumed by outside things. Even us, just like Saul, we're consumed by outside things thinking that's what God's caring about. Even like when we, y'all remember highs and lows when we do highs and lows? Like you say the high of the week and the low of the week. All those things are outside things. It was a good week. Promotion at work. It was a good week. Aced the exam. It was a good week. The weather was good. Outside. It was a bad week. My tire went flat. It was a bad week. She didn't text back. Whatever. That's what it is. All outside things. I wonder what God would say if we asked him to evaluate our weeks. That was a good week for him. He was patient today. That was a great week for her. She was forgiving today. That's how God looks. Could be true, could be false, I don't know. There's a story. There's like a group of people and they're in a bus and they're going to like someplace far away for a church conference, a youth conference. And they're all going and it's all a blast. They're all singing Mizmor in the bus. And they're like, y'all know those like narrow roads? It's like goes in a circle and then it goes like to the top. Y'all know what I'm talking about? It's like you have to, and like there's only a railing and only like one car can fit there. Like that's where they're on, right? And they're all doing that. They're going up, they're singing Mizmor, they're having a blast. Even the bus driver, he's like having a blast. He's like, man, I love this. He starts like clapping, but then the car like kind of like, it's kind of crazy, right? But the car kind of hits the thing. And it hits the railing. And they start falling. And they're like, God. We're falling. Help us. They land in the water, they don't die. But the water's starting to come into the car, into the bus. God, the water is getting up into the bus, up to my ankles. Help us. The water continues to rise up to their neck. God, this is our last chance. We're about to die. Help us. What are they missing here? Because this story is like what we would do. Now, one of them said, God, I might die. Have mercy on me. God, my soul. Like I'm scared. I might die. Have mercy on my soul. Even then, it's about the outside thing. Nobody's really concerned about their soul, the status of their soul. And that's what God rejects. That's why David was his man. We're just like Saul. Our problem is not that we don't pray enough. Don't get it twisted. Pray. Pray ceaselessly, as St. Paul says. But our problem is not that we don't pray enough. Our problem is not that we don't go to church enough. Go to church. But that's not our problem. Our problem is that we're students. Our problem is that we're engineers. Our problem is that we're businessmen and businesswomen. And that prioritizes our heart over God, and God rejects that. That's our problem. You're wondering why your prayers aren't answered. You're wondering why your fasts are not received. You're wondering why it doesn't feel like God sees you at church. Why? Because you're a businessman first. Because you're an engineer first. Because you're a student first. That's why. God desires the heart above all things. The outside things don't matter to him. He likes it to see it when we win it. He likes to see us accomplishing things. You got a promotion, good job. You aced your test, good job. But he does not like that as much as somebody who repents. as much as somebody who seeks him from his heart. That's our issue. That's our problem. Our biggest problem is these things. And what's the cost of these things? The Spirit of God. I'm afraid the Spirit of God may have left a lot of us. And we haven't even noticed it. Just like Saul. We're so caught up with the motion of life, the motion of school, the motion of work, the motion of all these things, relationships. We have not even realized we have lost the Spirit of God a long time ago, like Saul. That's the cost. Like I said, Mazmur was like a band-aid for him. Like David playing this instrument for him, it was just a band-aid for him. It wasn't really addressing the issue. We put band-aids on a lot of things without actually addressing the issue. True story. So if y'all know anything about me, I'm like a clean freak. I wash the dishes all the time. My roommates can attest to this. The house is spotless. When I have time. Only when I have time. I never have time. So, yeah. But anywho, I'm better now than I was. But back in high school, I wasn't, the cleanest person. I was, like, busy. Like, I'm talking about, like, my room was a mess a lot. Like, I would, like, come home or whatever, and, like, my room would be clean, right? Shout out Mom. She would clean my room. I know, I'm sorry, I was spoiled. Like, I clean my own room now, I promise. But anyways, I would, like, come home, and, like, the room would be clean or whatever, and, like, I'll be tired. So I'll be like, you know what, like, let me just, like, drop my shirt here. It's just one shirt. And, like, I'll drop it. Then I'm like, let me, like, the next day I'll be like, man, I'm tired. Like, let me just drop my jacket. I drop it. And I swear, day 3, the room was filled with clothes. I don't know how it got there. And it's messy. And, like, the weekend comes, and, Saturday is, like, school. High school is nuts. It's crazy, because they had us waking up at 6 a.m. Like, I don't know how I did that for 4 years. But, like, the weekend comes, that's the only time I can sleep. My mom, she, like, barges into the room. Like, how they don't knock. And it's aggressive, too. It's like they just barge it open. No good morning, no nothing. Straight for the blinds, open the blinds. I'm like, what's going on? And she's like, clean your room. Like, I'm not going to tell you anymore to clean your room. And at this point, I'm upset. I'm like, bro, I'm tired. Like, let me sleep. And she's like, I'm leaving the house. When I get back, your room better be spotless. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like, okay. I didn't say whatever. That would be bad. But I'm like, okay. So she leaves. I'm like tired, bro. And at this point, I just like grab my clothes. It's like a pile of clothes. And like I put it under my bed. And like I make sure like nothing's sticking out. And I make sure it's not like obvious. It's like it looks good. It looks like nothing's there. And I go back to sleep. My mom pulls up and she's like walks straight in my door, barges in again. I'm like, okay, like what's up? Like I cleaned the room. She's like, wow, like good job. Like you actually listened. Like I'm proud of you. Like how did you hang your clothes? Like she goes to the closet is empty. All my clothes is gone. Closet is empty. And she's like, where's the clothes? I'm like, that's the washer. It's like in the washer. And she goes, the washer is empty. She's like, what's going on? And she looks under my bed and like all the clothes is there. And I kid you not, like my high school friends can attest to this, I got kicked out the house that day. She's like, leave. I'm like, what? Over clothes? Fine. Let me pack up my clothes and leave. I go to closet is empty. My clothes are dirty. I'm like, I don't need, I'm out. I leave. I like call her like an hour later. I'm sorry, mom. Like, but be it. Point is, easy solution, easy fix would be, moment I get home, hang up my shirt. Moment I get home, put my clothes in the bin. I'm preaching, I still need to learn this. That would be easy fix. I had a Band-Aid solution. It didn't last. This is a Band-Aid solution for Saul. It's not going to last. Sermons. We hear these sermons. Like those sermons we like that go crazy on YouTube. Or the sermons that we hear here. And like we're like, dang, that's fire. He's spitting. She's like, whatever, this sounds good. And then we leave the same people. You're missing the point. The purpose of listening to the sermon is not for you to be like, dang, I like what that person said. The purpose is to change something about your life. How are we the same people we were yesterday, last month, last year? What's the point of that? Like that's what the purpose of the sermon is. That's what the purpose of the Mazmur is. The purpose of the Mazmur is not to make us feel good. It's to cure us of our greediness. To cure us of our like selfishness, all these kind of things. But we do it, it's a Band-Aid, it makes us feel good for the day, it gets us through the day, but guess what? Tomorrow is always going to come. Those issues are still there. That problem is still there. You're still not happy. For whatever reason, Saul's like, why am I not happy? How many of us here today say, why am I not happy? It's because we have these Band-Aids. We don't got the real thing. We don't have the real solution. Inside problems need inside results. Saul had an inside problem. Only he could solve this through God. Inside results. Not your friends, not your family, not the club. That is between you and God. He desires your heart. He knocks, it says. On what? The doors of our hearts. Inside. The results, the way to solve this is from our insides. And you know what the sad part is? We actually, like a lot of us, we know what it takes. Like we know exactly what God wants us to give up. We know the type of life we live in. We know like I probably should not be doing this. And if I did stop, I'm sure like I would receive like blessings, but it's too hard to sacrifice it. It's too hard to give it up. Like we know exactly what it takes. Like I said, I knew what it took to make my room clean. It's like I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. Like another example, like what I use is like for example, like a lot of times, like one of the biggest issues for people today, especially not teenagers, but like young adults, is pornography. We know those things that trigger us for pornography. I can't tell you how many people like I've talked to, like who've talked to me and said these things, like yeah, like I'm struggling with this, and it started because like I was scrolling on Instagram, and then I just went like just happened. You know your triggers, and then I'm like, okay, why don't you delete Instagram? I can't do that, bro. I can't do that. How do you expect to change parts of your life if you're not making like the sacrifices that God's asking you to do? What does sacrifice mean? By definition, it means uncomfortable. To sacrifice, it means you have another option that's hard to give up. Of course, it's not easy. But the cost of not doing it is losing the Spirit of God. The reward of doing it is receiving the blessings of God. Now you tell me which one's a better decision. How did David solve his problems? Psalm 19, verse 14. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, my strength and my redeemer. Let the words of my mouth and what? The meditation of my heart. That's what made him a man after God's heart. That's what separated Saul and David. We would look at both of these men and be like, David is a wild dude. Saul is at least a little bit better. But God's like, no, you guys got it reversed. David is a man after my heart. Saul looks good on the outside. I don't care about the outside. David's heart is a heart after mine. That's my guy right there. How did David do it? She said this, O Lord, my strength and my redeemer. You may be asking yourself, how am I going to do it? I know what I got to give up. How am I going to do it? My strength and my redeemer. That's how you're going to do it. Through God. Of course you can't do it. Of course we can't. Guess who can though? God can do it. The moment you say, my strength and my redeemer, watch what he does for you. There is no secret to what made David this way. It's right there written for us. Meditation with his heart, giving up his heart for God, relying on God as his strength and his redeemer. But us, we don't want to sacrifice. God, can you save me and give me what I need without me not like giving up the stuff that I enjoy doing on the side? That's not how God works. Friendship with the world is enmity with me. Friendship with the world and you're an enemy to me. We got decisions to make. People who serve, right? Servants of the church. Many people today, they do the work of God, but they've lost the Spirit of God as well. It's so easy to think just because you go to church all the time, just because you're like you're participating in these things, that the Spirit of God is with you. That's not true. That's not true. Don't get it confused. Saul, he grew up like praising God. He still he ended up like calling on God's name still, but even when he did that, it wasn't from his heart. That's not true, right? Like servants, like if you're serving the church and like your children or your wife feels neglected, you're missing the point. You're missing the point. Oh no, I can't like talk to you today like son, like I'm caught up with church and this happens for months. You're missing the point. The Spirit of God has left you. The Spirit of God has left you. All this service that we do, but you're still judging others. The Spirit of God is not with you. You just got back from preaching. You just got back from singing. But then you go in your car and you're judging a homeless person. You're judging somebody else. The Spirit of God has left you. You're not doing anything for God right now. You guys know what the best thing you could do for God? The best thing you could ever do for God is something that nobody will ever see. The best thing you could do for God is something that nobody would ever see. David, king, but nobody knew it. And you want to know about what his greatest victory in life was? It wasn't Goliath. It was this right here. becoming a king, but being humble enough to not use it as leverage, to not use it as manipulation, to not use it to get his way, but to be content. That was his biggest victory. Not Goliath. The best thing you could do for God is something that nobody would ever see. That forgiveness you gave to somebody, that patience you showed somebody, that understanding you gave somebody, that care you gave that person. Even when they didn't recognize it as such, but you didn't feel the need to be like, you never understand me. See, I was trying to show you care. I was trying to show you love. No. If you do that and you have the mentality of, at least God saw my effort, that's the best thing you could do for him. That's the best thing. Like I said, because he couldn't realize why he lost the Spirit of God, he was never happy. He kept trying to please others, and he lost his peace. He lost his peace. One thing I'll say to everybody here is don't let the world cost you your inner peace. What did Christ say? My peace I give to you. I don't give you as everybody else gives. What I give you is not of the world. I give you peace like nothing you've ever had before. Inner peace. That you will be with me for eternity. Don't let the world take that inner peace from you. Don't let your emotions and your feelings be dictated or be changed based off outer things. What somebody says to you, what somebody does behind your back, whether that person texted back or not, whatever. Don't let anybody steal your inner peace. David, nobody knew about him. He's playing with sheep. But how much more happier is he than the king of Israel who has the whole nation in the palm of his hands? Don't let the world steal your peace. You see, we let the world steal our peace all the time. We talk about Saul had an evil spirit tormenting him. We torment ourselves, worried about all of these things, people's opinions. Did she see my story? She saw it, but she didn't text back. What's going on? You know what I'm saying? Wait, why didn't he like my picture? Why did my likes not get this high? Whatever. And then it literally ruins our day. It literally impacts us. Don't let the world take your peace. I'm going to skip that for the sake of time. So, David, he's playing this instrument for Saul. He's still doing that. And it's working out for Saul a little bit. Every time David would leave, Saul would go nuts again. But David, he comes back whenever he needs him. He starts playing his instruments or whatever. And Saul's he feels good. And it actually says that he loved him. Saul's wow, you are the best thing. I love you. So much so that he made him his armor bearer, meaning the person, whenever the king goes out to battle, he has an armor bearer, somebody carries armor for him. It's a pretty big thing. So I was yeah, this is my guy. For now. Now we're going to get to the story that everybody loves and knows and hears, and then we're going to wrap it up for today. David and Goliath. We're going to talk about David and Goliath. So, Goliath, if y'all don't know about Goliath, he's a Philistine. Remember, the main enemy of the Israelites at this time is the Philistines. And Goliath, he's part of that nation, and he's huge. He's as tall as the basketball hoop, that rim. I don't know what they were eating and drinking back then in Israel, but bro, he was huge. He was huge, big dude. And they're at a standoff in the valley. So you might be asking why is David and Goliath fighting one-on-one? I thought war is a nation versus nation. So the thing is, there was the Philistines right here, right? And they had the Israelites right here. And between them is a valley. If you know anything about war, I know only things from Call of Duty, that's why I'm saying this, but if you know a little bit about war, whoever has high ground wins. Meaning if you give up your ground and people have an advantage on you, you lose. They'll get you, it's easy. So you had the Philistines here, the Israelites here, and a valley. And so they're at a stand-up, they're no, you go first, no, you go first, no, you go first, no, you go first, nobody's trying to go. And so you know what? We'll send our best warrior and you send your best warrior. Whoever wins this, will be the leader over the other nation. And so they pick their best warrior, and it's Goliath. And Goliath is there, and he's cursing up a storm. Not about them in particular, about their God. Because remember, back then when you go to war, it's my God versus your God. Let's see who's better. And so they're he's cursing up their gods, and everybody there is shook. Because he's huge. They're Saul, go up and fight. He's no, not me. My tummy hurt. I can't do that. I can't go. And then like they're looking at everyone else, like they're looking at David's brothers. David's brothers are there. They're like, can y'all go? Can y'all go? Like, like, I'm not going. I'm not going. They're shook. All of them are shook. So David, what he was doing around this time is like, whenever he wasn't playing instruments for Saul, he would go back home. Why? He missed the sheep. I'm not even joking, literally. Like he would go back to like tend to his sheep. But then while he's at his house, his dad, Jesse, is like, hey, like your brothers and like the nation, they're at war right now. Make yourself useful. Get some like bread and stuff, some water, get a basket, and go bring it to them that they're like while they fight. Like give them something to eat. And he's like, okay, I'll do it. And so he's like he brings his stuff and he's going there. He's about to like give them their food and everything. And everybody's like looking at him crazy. And his brothers, they start talking. Like, but what are you doing here? Like y'all ever like, if y'all have little siblings, like y'all know how like, you know, when your little brother or little sister tries to like follow you places and you're like, bro, like what are you doing? Like in hindsight, I was a terrible brother. I'm not gonna lie. Anyway, they're like, why are you here? Why are you here? And they even say this, I know your pride and the insolence of your heart, for you have come down to see the battle. Meaning, bro, like I know you're just here, David, just to be a part of things. I know you're here just for people to like look at you or whatever. Leave. What are you doing here? You know what David says to them? He could have said, bro, do you know who I am? Do you know what kind of power I have over you? Instead of that, you know what he does? He says, what have I done now? Like, can I not even speak? Like, what have I done now? His first response was to look inwards. He did nothing. He's coming with food to save him, to feed him. And they're like, what are you doing? Like, leave, scram. And he's like, what could I have done? What could I have done to hurt him? What could I have done to make him feel this way? What could I have done to make him talk to me like this? He looked inwards. Like I said, this was his first victory. Looking inwards. This was his greatest victory. He looked inwards. And you know what the thing is? Well, the funny thing is what his brothers said to him was so far from the truth. David was not looking for attention. What his brothers said to him was just a reflection of like his own brother's insecurities. That's all it was. A lot of the times what we say about others actually was true about us. Oh, she's just looking for attention. How do you know? Do you know what it feels like to look for attention? Oh, he's just doing it to show off. How do you know? You be doing things to show off? A lot of the times, the things we say about people is our own projections of our own insecurities. That's what his brother was doing. And David, like I said, he didn't argue with them or nothing. He's like, what could I have done? Do you know how many like arguments and relationships we could have saved by having that mentality? How many friends have we lost that we don't talk to anymore? How many relationships that we have lost because we failed to do this? Because we failed to look inwards? I say this all the time. I don't care what situation you're in. Everybody has a part in something. It could be 1%. There's that 1% you could have changed that could have changed the whole outlook on your friendship, on your relationship, on your life right now. If you take that moment to look inwards. You know what one of the saints of the church says? Why are you so concerned about trying to reconcile people? Why are you so concerned about trying to get people to get along? Why don't you look inwards first? Why don't you get your flesh and your soul, sit them down and reconcile them first? We got our flesh and our soul fighting each other. We haven't reconciled that. We're trying to reconcile other people. Our flesh is winning. What does God say? Do not be of the flesh. But our flesh, bro, our soul down bad. But we're out here like projecting on other people, doing all these kind of things. What if David snapped back though? Like what if he snapped back? What would he have lost? His inner peace. Remember what I said? Don't let the world take your inner peace away. David refused. He's like, God has he has quieted my soul. Like a weaned child is my soul within me. He's quieted. I'm not going to let y'all take that away from me. Another reason why God calls David a man after his heart is because of their similarities. This is similar to Christ, right? David is the anointed king of Israel, and they talking crazy to him. Christ is the King of Kings, and they were talking crazy to him. This guy, he performs miracles with the power of the demons. Talking crazy. What did God say? Nothing. They started comparing him. They're like, are you even greater than Jacob? Did he say, I created Jacob? He didn't say that. Okay, you think that? On his trial, when they were spitting on him, mocking him, could he not just call the angels down on one second, be like, it's a wrap, like we're done? He said nothing. You see the similarity with David and him? This is why they're similar. This is why we call Christ the Son of David. Israelites, they waited for somebody to save them. And then when Christ came, they didn't recognize him. At this war, everybody's looking around. Who's going to save us? David came to save him. Nobody recognized him. Y'all see the similarities? And so David, he's like, okay, whatever. I'm not going to let what you said, like, disturb me. Like, it's fine. Like, it's cool. I'm used to it. I'm not worried. And then he hears the Philistine, he hears Goliath talking crazy, talking about God, talking about all these things. He's like, oh, no, that's not flying. I'm not going for that. That's not going. And he says this, you come to me with a sword, with a spear, and with a javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel whom you have defiled. It's about to go down. Like, everybody's scared. David, he's tiny, like I said. But he's like, I'm not going for that. It's not sliding. It's not happening. You're not going to talk about my God that way. He's actually kind of funny. Like, he says this. He's like, bro, like, he's like, who is this uncircumcised Philistine? That's like a translation for, like, whose man is this? Like, seriously, like, who is this dude? Like, why y'all scared of this dude? This uncircumcised Philistine. That's a crazy insult. That's what he's saying to him. Like, y'all scared of me? Give me the armor. Give me the shield. Give me the weapons. Give it to me. I'm going to go at him right now. Y'all, give it to me. He puts it on, and he's starting to go. He's like, it's kind of heavy. Actually, take it off. Take it off. Take it off. I don't need it. Take it away. Take it away. So they take it away. And so what does he do? He's like, he picks out like 5 of the smoothest stones that he could find. And again, in the name of the Lord, one shot. Done. How did he learn how to do this? Where did he get the aim for that? How do y'all know? Like, how do we know? Like, if you read the Bible, you would know. This was nothing new to him. He protected his sheep from bears, from lions. So to him, Goliath was nothing. David was the good shepherd over his sheep. Like God is our good shepherd who defeated death for us, who defeated our enemy. David, he defeated their enemy, which is Goliath. Y'all see the similarities? Is it clicking? It's clicking. I hope it's clicking. Something got to be clicking. Like, I'm going to wrap up with this. See, I like when we start early because I could talk longer and we could still discuss, but I'm almost done. Imagine this, right? Imagine this situation. People are scared. Goliath is huge. Logically, it really don't make sense to press this dude. It really don't make sense. It does not make sense to go against him. Logically, it doesn't make sense. If we're there, we would have done exactly what David's brothers were doing. Like, bro, put the armor down, man. Like, what are you about to do? Pebbles? Like, you lost? Like, what are you doing with pebbles? Like, pebbles is crazy. Like, everybody got, like, armor and stuff. These guys have pebbles. We would have been like, what are you doing? Even us, we would be like, no, we believe in God, but be real. Like, be for real. That's what we would do. Like, because we're too, like, scared to be bold and be like, nah, like, that's not going to work. We'd be like, just be, like, serious. Like, yeah, I believe in God. You're not expressing your belief in God by doubting. But to make us feel better, we'd be like, we believe in God, but let's be practical. We believe in God, but let's be real. That's a red flag. You know when you're talking to somebody and you bring up a Bible verse and you talk about God or whatever, you're like, yeah, it says that, but like, can we be realistic? That's a red flag. Because for David, this is real. This was real. True, this could be real, could be fake, I don't know. There's this religious dude, and like, he would always say glory to God. Like, no matter what was happening, it would be glory to God. Like, it's raining, glory be to God, whatever. And so he meets up with one of his boys, right? They're like religious, but like, they're not like outwardly religious, you know? Like, they're like, you know, one of those, what do you call them? I don't know, but he's like religious, but like low key. He's low key. So they end up linking up, and the guy, he comes to pick him up. The religious dude goes to pick him up. And then the dude's like, good to see you. Like, how was traffic? He's like, our traffic was nothing, glory be to God. He's like, okay, cool. They chop it up. They go to get food, they're eating. He's like, man, this is bomb. Like, what you think? He's like, it's actually great, glory be to God. And then they like chop it up some more, and they're about to go home, and he drops them off, and he's like, this was a great time. I had a lot of fun with you. And he's like, I had a lot of fun too. Glory be to God. And the man snaps. Like, bro, why you gotta bring God into everything? Like, you know me, like, I'm religious too, but you don't see me talking about God all the time. Like, why do you gotta bring him in? Just say the food was good, bro. Just say you enjoyed time with me. Like, why you gotta say glory to God for everything? Just chill. And the man had nothing to say. He's like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. Next day, man gets out, goes to his car, tries to go to work, gets in a car accident. The religious dude, he pulls up on him. And he talks to him, and he visits him, and he says, I said glory be to God, because there may be a day I may not have been able to eat with you. I'm appreciating that moment. I say glory to God, because there may be a day where I may not be able to drive with you. I appreciated that moment. I say glory to God, because there may be a day we may not be able to spend time together. And I appreciate God for that. Glory be to God, you're not dead. Really, you see, like the person who's like spiritual, like really, this thing is like second nature. Like if this was us, we would be the dude. Think about it. You're like kicking it with the homies, right? And they're playing music, and the music is vulgar. Imagine us like, excuse me, I don't like the words in this song. It's kind of crazy. Can we change it? Like, bro, like relax, bro. Like we're just having a good time. Stop killing the vibe. It's not that deep. That's what we would do. True or false? That's literally what we would do. It's somebody's birthday party. It's summer. It's sunny outside. But we got these bottles, Casamigos. I'm about to get this boat. Let's do it. Can we stay home? I got like these games for us, like, you know, Monopoly. Bro, what are you talking about, bro? These guys trolling. Like, really? That's what we say. We're missing the mark. All right. So I'm going to wrap up with this. So Goliath, he's not just a man. It's deeper than that. It's more symbolic than that. Goliath, like, he represents the world and the things of it. Goliath is like a lust. It's envy. It's greed. It's pride. It's arrogance. Don't just be fooled and read this story and be like, oh, the underdog, like, you know, little David killed Goliath. We got a lot of Goliaths in our life that feel like we can't overcome it. David just did it by calling the name of God. I come out to you in the name of the Lord. The Israelites there, you know why they couldn't beat him? You read that story, not once did they call God's name. But the one time that David called it, they win. These things that we're going through, don't be like Saul trying to manage it yourself. You'll drive yourself crazy. Trust in God fully like David did. That's how he's able to do it. Like I said, Goliath, he represents the world. Saul, he represents logic. He represents logic. Since when does God care about our logic? Since when does God operate on logic? He's above logic. The reason why we're struggling with our lives is because we move with logic, not by faith. What does it say though? Move by faith, not by sight. We completely forgot that. Let's move by logic and facts and reason. That's not how God operates. Because guess what? When we move that way, whenever we overcome something, we give glory to the facts. We give glory to our logic, our reason. God don't do that. God doesn't do that. But wait, God, if I don't get this promotion, how will I afford my dream house? But wait, God, if I don't get married at this age, won't I be too old later? Logic. Virgin Mary. Logic says a virgin can't have a kid. But when the angel came to her, what did she say? Let it be according to your word. I am the servant of the Lord. You see the difference between us and those who have defeated the world? You see how much of the world we are? And how much out of the world they were? David, he represents a man of faith. If you live in faith, you're in a different world than others. Literally, you look at life differently. We are not living the same life if you live by faith. Think about it this way. Like, you know when you're like on a plane and you're looking down, it doesn't matter if like a dude is 6'3" or someone is 5'10". They look like the same height. They look the same. When you're living by faith, that's kind of how life is. Nothing is too big for you. No issue is not conquerable for you. Nothing is too stressful. Nothing is not, like, everything is fine when you live by faith. Nothing worries you. When you're in faith, the giant is nothing before God. Whatever you're struggling with is nothing before God. I love this quote from one of the church fathers. It says this: trust that God sees you He hears you and he feels for you. Let me stop right there. He hears you. Doesn't stop there. He feels for you. He identifies with you. He understands you. We all want like a good listener. But how about a listener who knows exactly what you're talking about? He hears you and he feels for you. So your little matters are very big before his love. And your big matters are very small before his might. Those things that you think are the biggest issues, how am I going to overcome it? He's like, easy. It's nothing for my love. It's nothing. And those little matters that you think are insignificant, I care about it. I care about how your day went. I care about how you're feeling. You know, like sometimes when you're talking to somebody and you're like, and do they even care? Like, do they really care about my day? Or like, this is a conversation. God, I care. Tell me all about it. So David, he defeats Goliath. You know what he does after that? Take a guess. Back to the sheep. He did nothing. Why? When God says nothing, you do nothing. God had not commanded him yet to overthrow Saul. He did nothing. He did nothing. John chapter 10, verse 27. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. David heard his voice loud and clear. He knew it wasn't his turn to be king. But in the meantime, David, he did this in his youth. In the meantime, remember, the woman used to sing for Saul. Now they start singing for David. They say, Saul, he slayed his thousands, but David his 10,000s. This is like a very problematic thing. Like, why can't they just say David like killed Goliath? Why they gotta bring Saul into it? And Saul, he hears this. You know what it says? So Saul eyed David from that day forward. Glory be to God.